Welcome to this lecture on Adobe Illustrator by Eduonics Technologies. In this lecture, we're going to be taking a look at perspective grid in more depth. We're going to be building out the shapes with the grid we created in the previous tutorial. We set it up in the previous one. We're going to be building it out in this one and basically showing you how to use it. So the first thing to note is that there's this little box that comes up when you choose the perspective grid tool or the perspective selection tool. And these are pretty easy to remember shortcuts, so when you're working with these, learn the Shift P and Shift V switches between the perspective grid tool and perspective selection tool. It's pretty easy. But it was covered up in the last video, and clicking these will tell you what side that your shape is going to start on. So I did a rectangle shape, and there's a much easier way, and that's just to press 1, which is the blue, the left side, 2, which as you can see is lining up with this parallel to the bottom, and then 3, and this is parallel with the right shape. So by pressing these numbers, you can achieve your perspective before you let go of the mouse. And I'm Control Alt or Command Option on Mac dragging this, and you can see what it does too. It's creating, and you can also press it while you're dragging, but it's creating an inline image. So like this would be it lined up at the bottom right corner, and it's all on the horizontal right side plane. So there's a lot of combinations. I won't have time to get into each and every one of them, but that's essentially what holding in 1, 2, or 3 does. So I've selected the shape that I made holding in one of those, and I can still do it. So even after it's made, these are considered perspective shapes, by the way, and you might see a warning saying that something's going to flatten one. Well, you might see it later, but that just means that your new shape isn't really in the perspective mode. You won't see these anchors come up. You won't see all this stuff happen. So these are actually kind of smart shapes in a way. So when you're drawing out a shape, I can draw 1 to intersect this middle point, or this right grid, for example, parallel with the left. I can also press 4, and that'll make it normal. So another thing I can do is once I've drawn a shape, I can, if I press the 5 button before I start dragging, and you have to select it with the selection tool here. So just draw your shape and then hold in Control, and then hold in 5, and it'll drag it out perpendicular to its plane. Well, you see what's going on here. Basically, it's going to be parallel and in perspective to the last shape, or the shape that you're dragging it out from. Let's say that you want to make this into a box, and typically you're going to find that you work with a with a 2-point perspective like this on the outside of the box. So I just held in 5 and dragged that over with the selection tool there, perspective selection tool. And I currently have the rectangle tool highlighted, so I want to find an anchor point and just start drawing it out. As you can see, it's in the wrong angle, so I just hit 1 to, because I'm doing this face between these two sides, the one closest to you. And you just want to make sure you find anchor so that it snaps in. Since you're drawing it in perspective, it should be totally snapped into these points. As you can see. So with this tool still selected, I'm going to hold in 5 after I click this. I'm holding the mouse button, hold in 5. I'm holding Alt to copy this. You won't be able to see a snap, but it will snap just a little bit there. The best way to do this typically is to do what you just did on the other side. So I have my rectangle tool and I'm still in perspective mode. So I'm going to find that anchor. And I'm still in the plane I want to draw into, so it's convenient. So now what you see here, and I will put a stroke on all of these. So you can see the order is out of order. So if I do Control-Shift left bracket, it'll put it in order and still keep it in perspective. So most things won't alter the perspective. So we'll just put a roof on this. Still making sure we're using the rectangle tool and that it shows the perspective cursors, or whatever that we are using that it shows perspective cursors. The special one's just for perspective. Okay, I'm going to start out and we'll press 2 and just make sure it locks into that anchor up there. I'm going to bring this back in front just to make sure it's in front. And there you have a box. We can make all of these transparent. Like so. Semi-transparent. And it's a good start for a in perspective glass box there. So basically, you would draw a shape, and if this were a building face, you could then draw the individual windows. Do a blend to make sure things keep straight. Shift V, and then just drag this over here. And it's good to use the grid whenever possible. So you might want to expand these first. You get the idea. I was going to show you a much easier way than this, and that's to use the stamp tool. So you can bring that up by going to Window, and I'm sorry, not the stamp tool, but the swatches or symbols tool. Shift Control F11 or Shift Command F11. And I've already created some symbols. Essentially, just to create the symbols, you would take a flat shape like this and drag it on to the symbols palette and just give it a name. You can also, this top options for Illustrator, CS5, and below compatibility. So it's not that important, but align to pixel grid if you want to. If you're doing this for web or something, you want to align it to pixel grid so you can see for whatever reason. In the type, you can just put graphic. But we already created a couple symbols ahead of time, and I'll show you basically how easy it is. So if I was making some buildings, and this is what we'll be doing in the next tutorial, instead of creating cubes like that or creating single faces and extruding them and going through all that, we'll just take the front, for example, put it down there on the right side. And, you can imagine what these go on, and I'll just Shift V to bring up my tool, and automatically, as soon as I start dragging it, it is aligned. So I'll just press 3 to get the side that I want. So I'll put it there, and I'm going to drag this out a good ways. Now it's time for this one. Make sure you're always holding in 5 when you're dragging, so that you're keeping everything in perspective. Because if I were to drag this without holding in 5, try to drag it this way, I'm going to have some funky looking building there. So you always hold 5 and then drag it. You might have to do a lot of manual aligning, but it's a lot easier than that method that we were just looking at. So to make your roof, you would, and since you're not drawing the right side, don't do this, but to make your roof, you would just get your rectangle tool and start at one of these intersecting anchors. Wait till your smart guides say anchors. Hit 2. And you may have to guesstimate a little bit to get those exact corners. But then again, you can just always transform it by holding this corner in and get it closer when you're zoomed in. So at this point, you would just change the color of the sides of the building, but we're going to get more into that later as we design a small city using the perspective tool. So there's actually a lot more on this tool, but these are all basics and the intermediate stuff. So if you want to learn more about it, go to Adobe's website or just Google Adobe help and perspective tool, and there's a drawing on with the perspective tool and another option. Either one of them is good to learn about it. So in the next tutorial, we're going to be drawing a cityscape. So thanks for watching this one, and keep practicing.